Welcome to Exploring Beyond the Edge with Dr. Cynthia Andrews. Are you ready to explore the conscious path around you? Open your heart and mind and awaken your curiosity? You've stopped into the right place. Now, here is your host, Dr. Cynthia Andrews.
Well, hi there, and welcome, and thanks for being with us again. This is Cynthia Andrews, and I'm here again with Colin, my co-host. So before we start, I just wanted to say a quick thank you to three people who have helped my technical and graphic design of my website. They've made it incredibly beautiful and usable, and that would be Abby White and Jeff Smolin and Wayne Mason. Before we really get going this week, we had some comments from last week and a little bit of unfinished business, and Colin's going to take it from here.
Yeah, well, good evening, everybody, and welcome. Thank you very much for being here once more, and I hope for another 11 or dozen weeks ahead. Cynthia and I are sat in front of the beautiful warm wood fire again in Connecticut, cooling now into the fall. It's 7 p.m. here in U.S. Eastern Time, 4 p.m. in the U.S. Pacific. It's midnight in the United Kingdom, where we have quite a few listeners. 1 a.m. over the channel into the English over the English Channel, better rather than in it, to Paris and mainland Europe. So with everybody comfortable, open minds and open hearts, I hope, we begin. But it is on a sad note just initially here. Don Christian telephoned in last week and told us on air, actually, of the sad passing of a long-time colleague and many years, Bob Dean. Robert Dean, known to most as Bob Dean, passed away on the 11th of October, just over a week ago. Cynthia and I want to convey our sincere condolences to Bob's wife, Marcia, daughter Lisa, and son Eric, also his many friends. Robert Dean served in the U.S. Army, retiring as Command Sergeant Major. He served as Supreme Headquarters Allied Powers in Europe, known as SHAPE, and it was during his time stationed at NATO between 1963 and 1967 as an intelligence analyst that his interest in the existence of unidentified flying objects first began. He caught sight of a top-secret document about UFOs, and after that he dedicated most of his life, in fact, adult life, to bringing to light the UFO phenomena and UFO contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. He served on the board of directors of the National Investigation Committee on Aerial Phenomena Research Group until his dissolution in 1980. He was a member of MUFON for 20 years and was involved with the Institute of Noetic Sciences, a parapsychological research institute co-founded by former astronaut Edgar Mitchell, another area where he and I have mutual associates. I liked Bob a lot. We got on well and enjoyed time together in various parts of the world, usually before and after presentations in those countries. In the 1990s and 2000s, I was only aware that Dr. Stephen Greer, myself and Bob, among the most prominent international presenters who were talking publicly in terms of consciousness being directly associated with the UFO and ET subjects. And each of us, of course, in turn, received quite a fair bit of flack for expressing that view publicly from within the UFO community at that time. Change never comes easy. As he and I shared quite often during that period, Bob was a good soul, a good man, and a courageous one too. Another member of the team has left us and will be missed on this side.
Thank you, Colin. Well, I only met Bob a few times, maybe a handful of times, and I could certainly see he was a very special person, so thank you. If you want to call into tonight's show, first of all, if you would like to email us, email explorationsandenergy.com, and make sure to put in the subject line radio question, otherwise I'm not going to know what it is. And if you want to call, the number is 888-346-9141. So after last week's program, there were a lot of different things that popped out. We had a lot of comments into our email, and we're really looking for expert guests to fill in the shows to answer some of the questions that people had. A lot of people really agreed with the stipulations, which is great. People have been very interested in the idea of a holographic universe and each of us having a unique perspective that develops the evolution of the whole. People were very intrigued by Dean Radin's concept of a bow wave, although one of our listeners felt he related more to the wake of the wave than the bow of the wave. But we are very excited to say that Dean Radin will be joining us upcoming. And thank you, Colin, for arranging that. That was a good one.
I'm very much looking forward to it.
And people also commented on wanting more information on the idea of a conscious universe. And next week we have Teokas and Ghost Horse coming in to talk about consciousness and the conscious Mother Earth. And that will be a really excellent conversation as well. So we will continue to schedule guests that speak to the topics that you tell us you're interested in. So please continue to let us know what you want. Next week, 10/29, Teokas and Ghost Horse. He is a peace activist. He's an author, a musician from the Lakota Nation, and he will be talking Earth consciousness. On 11/5, we have Mark Crowley. He is the best-selling author of Lead from the Heart, and he is going to be sharing information from HeartMath and from his own work about how to really be a leader. And you don't want to miss this one either, because we all need to be leaders right now. And then on 11/12, Dean Radin will be joining us. He's the author of Conscious Universe, Entangled Minds, Real Magic, and the chief scientist at the Institute of Noetic Sciences. So we have 3 weeks of really exciting shows coming up. And then there's today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
No, I'm just joking. So tonight, actually, we're talking about intuition and accessing the inner wisdom of the body. And, the main reason that we want to do this and that we want to do this right now in this program is because, well, first of all, we are inundated with information in the world. We're inundated with multiple versions of the same reality. And in order for us to discern any level of truth, we need to be able to access that inner wisdom and utilize it. And as we go through the upcoming programs, we're going to be talking about things that definitely defy everyday reality, and we're going to be needing that intuitive insight to guide us through that process. And so that's why we decided to dedicate today's program to intuition. So intuition is really the result of how our body receives and processes energy information. We talked last time about how the world is a vibration and our body receives that vibration. So frequencies are received and turned into emotions, inner knowings, body sensations, and felt perceptions. So, personally, how that information is received and converted is utterly fascinating, but it's a little much probably for this show. But if you are also fascinated by it, visit my website. There's a lot of information on the website. There's a lot of information in my books, and we actually have a webinar series starting on November 22nd, starting with a class called Energy Basics, and enrollment is open. Take a look. Maybe you would like to join us. Colin, why do you think intuition is important?
I think it's vital as far as our growth is concerned. We live currently at the end of one extremely long cycle, which has become more and more contaminated, influenced by others, colored in big ways. For me, intuition is uncontaminated potential, effectively. It provides at some level personal security. It's the inner voice, the subconscious that knows everything, and nobody owns it. We don't, of course, have complete knowledge of where the control for that intelligent, intuitive process begins or where it will end. But it's there, and it has provided new insights, new inventions, let's face it. So it's very important for our future, and I'm pleased that it has, you've decided basically to bring it up early in the process of these programs, in the series of these programs, because it's vital as we now begin to make inroads into the future.
Yeah, what you just remind me of. So as a naturopath, intuition certainly guides the process of discerning what's wrong with someone or what their solution will be. It isn't the end result. It's actually the beginning. It helps you decide on what questions to ask, and knowing what questions to ask is probably the key. Certainly to being to being free with things.
Absolutely.
And most scientific discoveries, the scientists talk about how they were inspired with intuition, in major leaps. So let's take a quick minute to remember the stipulations from last week. We agreed to suspend disbelief and agree that everything is a vibration and our bodies are receivers of vibrational information. The universe is holographic and conscious, and all aspects are interconnected. So a lot of people listened and took our intuitive index assessment that was on my website, and that's really great. And if you haven't taken the assessment, you might want to do it. It's a useful tool. And I created it because so many people came into my office saying that they're not intuitive. But when we stopped and took a look at their experiences, to look at how they make decisions, how they form relationships, how they determine what was important in their life, we discovered that they are very intuitive. They were just receiving information differently than the way they thought information was supposed to be. I think probably most people have an idea that clairvoyance or having visions is what intuition is, or just knowing things is what it is. And, those are two very valuable ways, but there are many other ways of receiving intuitive information as well. So the assessment will help you ask a whole lot of questions, and it helps you identify what type of intuitive you are. So where your strongest attributes are, where your weakest attributes are, and certainly we all use all of them. But if we can be balanced in how we use all of them, we're going to get the best outcomes. And so, even just taking the test is insightful. You took it, didn't you,
Yes,
Carl?
I did. And I've got to say, I really, truly did find it very helpful and enlightening, because whilst I've had, since I've been involved in the research since '83, I hadn't before that time particularly had any particularly unusual experiences that influenced me in a big way. But, having had a lot of experiences since '83, I had not really thought very much about what I was responding to in each of those, and so I kind of basically relived a lot of them as I was going through the rather long form, but nonetheless, it was interesting to see the score, increase as you're inserting your numbers. I really have not thought that much about it. Having said that, the starting point where I think we should have been on to this years back with Pat Delgado and I and Busty Taylor in those early days of researching the crop circles, because we often felt, and I think there's the clue, we felt like somebody was observing us. We often said this, that it felt like somebody or something was sat on our shoulders. So there was something happening there which fired us up, which led us forward, continued day by day to stick with it. This wasn't a flincing phenomena, that was there one day and we forgot about it the next. Something that seemed to be interacting and pulling us on. And so with the dowsing, the remote viewing, the UFO experiences, the interactions, the meditation, the voice phenomena, all of those things that have happened,
I think
this has been part of all of them. And we can get into them later, perhaps.
That's very exciting.
Well, it excites me.
All right. Well, not all of us have these amazing experiences every day, but Colin clearly does. So, what I have identified are 5 routes that you will have made clear to you in the assessment. And these 5 routes are inner knowing, when we just know something is true without any rational reason. Being a feeler or an empath, feeling things inside of our body as if it were happening to us. A sensor or a sensate, which is somebody who feels things through their body, receives intuitive information through their body. a clairvoyant who receives information through visions, and a clairaudient who hears messages. So we have these 5 types: the inner knowing, the empath, the sensate, the clairvoyant, and the clairaudient. And again, all of us use these all of the time, but some people use one so much more than they use others. And when we can begin to balance them, it just rounds out the information that we're getting. So you did, what was your index?
Well, let's just have a look. I went right the way through the form and, did the whole thing as you intended it to be done. And I found that, I came out at the end of it, and I'm sure, we've people listening listeners that went through this themselves. I came at number 1 is a feeler. Number 2 was a seer clairvoyant. But last was a sensor. Now, I don't quite know how you would read that with regard to the experiences and, my level of success or otherwise in those experiences measured against what this is telling me.
Mm-hmm. So you feel things in your heart first. You have an emotional connection to things, and then you have a vision in your head of what that connection means.
That's interesting.
And it's interesting because I certainly am first a sensate. I feel things in my body, and because I feel them in my body, then I get a vision. And so I feel my body, you feel it in your heart.
Yeah, no, that's it. I mean, how would you read then the fact that I try to look at myself and how I feel compared to others feeling all kinds of situations. Being an ex-firefighter in the early days of turning up at road traffic accidents with trapped individuals, the fact that I felt as much for each one of those people in pain, it was almost impossible to do my job. I've tried, even politically, and I don't want to go there, particularly tonight, we're not gearing ourselves for that, but I try to say, what is different about my response to this political situation and others? And what I feel, and I hope I don't come across, in the wrong way here, but I feel it's because I care. I care about, the planet. I care about other people. I care about our children, our animals, and so that, I guess, comes from the feeler instinct. I'm reading it that way anyway.
Yeah, actually, we'll talk more about that in a little bit, because you're really tuning into some of the downfalls of that, where you really feel things so deeply that it almost takes you off of the ability to work on it.
Yeah.
So, that's interesting. We're closing in on time here. We're going to be on a break soon, so I don't want to really get into new information at this moment. But you've also had strong experiences as a knower. I remember when we came home from...
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, when we came home from, I don't know what
Your
we were
mom's.
doing, my mother's house to our house. It was about 11:30 at night.
It was.
And you turned to me and said...
Yeah, no, it was bizarre. I've never understood it since. But we had spent the evening at dinner. Actually, perhaps I should continue, do you think, after the break on this?
I guess we'll continue.
I can just say, yes, I mean, yes, I think it's best.
Well, so we're going to be going to a break now. Stay around, because we're going to go through all of these 5 intuitive aspects and look at different examples of all of them. Be sure to call in with your questions or email in with your questions, and we look forward to talking to you again very soon.
It's your world. Motivate, change, succeed. VoiceAmericaEmpowerment.com.
We all have the inner ability to use the gifts within ourselves to serve ourselves, our families, loved ones, and our communities. Once you have discovered these gifts and talents, you can promote harmony, peace, and hope. To find out how to harness your own gifts and talents, tune in to Get Ready. Get ready for your breakthrough with host Felicia A. Hill, live every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time and 2 p.m. Pacific Time on the Voice America Empowerment Channel. Listen and share with others.
Moving forward can be difficult to do sometimes. There is always something going on. Many times, nobody else knows exactly what you're going through. If you are experiencing pain or loss, even something that is unexplained that is missing in your life, You'll want to tune into Go For It with host Joe Hausman. Joe and her guests will show you laughter and love. Sometimes you just need something a little positive in your week. Make that spot Tuesday mornings at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, 6 a.m. Pacific Time on Voice America Empowerment.
Follow us on Twitter for more great ideas at Voice America Empowerment.
This is Exploring Beyond the Edge. To reach Dr. Cynthia Andrews or her guest today, please call 1-888-346-9141. That's 1-888-346-9141. You may also send an email to energyexplorations@gmail.com. Now, back to our program.
Well, thank you. So we were talking before the break about the different 5 types of intuitive awareness, and we were just starting to talk about inner knowing or claircognizance. And so if you are a knower, you probably in your regular life rely a lot on your mental abilities to engage the world. You probably have a lot of insight and creativity. And you receive your intuitive information as flashes of insight that seem to come out of the blue, and you just simply know things that you haven't been told. And that was kind of taking us to a situation Colin and I had where we had come home from my mother's house. We were in the driveway.
Yeah, and I think to add as a backdrop to that I had a soft spot for Princess Diana. I had arrangements were secret at the time. Arrangements were in hand with a contact for Prince Charles, for me to show Prince Charles around some fields in England because circles were appearing on his property and other members of the royal family. And of course, I was hoping that Princess Diana would accompany him to that arrangement. But as Cynthia was saying, we came back from her mum's, had dinner, and pulled into the driveway of our home just about 2 miles away. And for reasons completely unknown to me, it just came out of nowhere. This is just about 11:15 p.m. And I said, turned to Cynthia and I said, "You'll have to be my Princess Diana now." And that was it. In fact, the hair's standing on my arm as I'm talking right at this second. But what we didn't know, we went to sleep. I don't know whether we had a quick drink or not, but we went to bed and got up in the morning. As Cynthia was going down, it was her turn to get coffee. And, I said to her, I can barely lift my head off the pillow. I feel so depressed. And with that, the telephone went. This is Shannon, which is Cynthia's brother. So I think you should tell Colin that Princess Diana is dead. And I cried immediately. I'm being perfectly honest. I just burst out crying. And this was 11:15 p.m. US. I had said it at 5:15 a.m. in Paris, the time difference there. This was an hour after Princess Diana had died at 4 a.m. French time. So the knowing can be quite profound and inexplicable.
And the hairs that stood up on your arms just now when you said that would be the sensor, right?
Right.
And so you do actually use it. You're just not aware of it.
Yeah,
and
that's a very good point.
It confirms for you the other knowing.
Very good point.
Okay, so people who are knowers have tremendous conviction in what they do. It's like Colin didn't stop and ask why he felt that. He knew something had happened. He was able to act upon it, or if there had been something to act on, he would have acted. So that tremendous conviction makes the people with inner knowing born leaders. But the downside is that knowers don't spend a lot of time in their body. You just did, but they can have a difficult time relating to others, and they can find emotion confusing. They can neglect the needs of their body, or worse, abuse it with overwork and short-circuit their intuitive flow. for me, the hardest part of being with people who are unbalanced in their inner knowing is that they can become really didactic. They can think that they know better than others and can offer their perceptive insights where it isn't necessarily wanted. They can become closed to other people's opinions and perspective. So if you are recognizing yourself there, it might be something that you want to work on, and work on it by becoming more balanced in the other aspects of intuition. So let's see. The other downside to being a knower is that you receive information so easily that you can become imprinted by other people's thoughts. So the most important thing about inner knowing is to know yourself, to stay grounded in your body, and to practice mindfulness. But if you scored lowest on inner knowing, then you may second-guess your insights and be easily swayed by other people's opinions. Your mind is probably very busy. You probably have a hard time stilling it for meditation practices. And to strengthen your inner knowing, you're going to want to practice present-time awareness, so to be present in the moment.
There's one also to add to that, Cynthia, if I just jump in here.
Sure.
On the downside, many of our listeners will know Reg Presley. He's a close friend of ours. He was the best man at our wedding. And Reg and Bren, sorry, are you?
Oh, no, you're fine.
Okay, I thought you were wanting to jump back in there. At midday, roughly midday, 1 o'clock, in fact, 1 o'clock news in Britain, Reg he claims to have heard that there was an enormous Flixborough incident near Liverpool in England. It was a very large chemical plant that exploded, and about 2,000 properties were badly damaged. Many people were killed. And this came out, according to Reg, he heard this, knew about it, had actually called Brent, his wife, and said, did you just kind of like hear that, this terrible incident? In fact, what actually happened was that the incident happened at 4 p.m. that afternoon, Saturday the 1st of June in 1974, which came out on the evening news, and the incident had not happened at 3 hours earlier, when Reg already had perceived having watched the incident reported on television news. He's not actually alone in that. Since this was put place, he wrote this up in his book, Wild Things They Don't Tell Us. And it's very appropriate for Wild Thing, his song. Sorry, I lost my track there. But anyway, that's the incident that is the downside.
Well, so basically what you're talking about is that he suddenly knew information that he didn't know what to do with. And so basically that's kind of more of a feeler of an empath.
Yeah, sorry, Cynthia, I just remembered what I was going to say, is that the incident, when he wrote it up in his book, others who read the book contacted me after Reg passed away to say that, I wish Reg had known that he wasn't alone with this. This happened to us too. This happened to me, that I saw that, I swear I saw it on the news midday. In fact, it didn't happen until late that afternoon. So there's something screwed up with the time sequencing, I don't know whether we're kind of like on the fringe of other reality there. It's a very hard one to figure out. Yeah,
and again, so what had happened to him is that he had an empathic understanding. He had known that something was going to happen, but he didn't. Well, actually, not really, right? He saw the whole thing.
That's what he certainly always said. And Bren, who he called at the time, said yes, he did. Yes, he did, Colin. He says he saw this on the midday news.
Okay, well, so let's just move on to the next type, which is the empath. So people who are empaths feel what other people feel. So, they have a high degree of emotional intelligence. They easily understand the needs and concerns of other people. They're extremely intuitive in relationships, and they enjoy making other people happy. So they're happy when the people around them are happy. So in whatever job an empath person has, they're usually the person that holds the team together. But the downside is really that they're overwhelmed by other people's feelings. And if they're around people who are depressed, who are anxious, then they become depressed and anxious, and they can't separate what's them and what isn't them. And so they have a very difficult time clearing it because it isn't theirs to clear. And so being able to make good boundaries and hold good, strong, flexible boundaries is probably the most important energetic thing that a feeler needs to do. A lot of people who are feelers actually end up hating their intuitive gift because of that feeling of overwhelming fear and powerlessness, especially right before a large-scale disaster, which is kind of what I thought you were getting at with Reg. It's like a lot of people will feel something coming and have the apprehension but not know what it is, or even if they know what it is, be completely unable to prevent it in any way.
You are onto something there, because, just sticking with Reg for a moment, somebody I knew so well, he wrote, it didn't become a big hit, but he wrote Living in a Dust Bowl, because he felt way before climate change and global warming were names that we heard regularly and now are seeing regularly. He wrote a most powerful number based upon the vision that he had of the future.
All right. So if you were low score as a feeler, you probably don't understand the complexity of other people's emotions and really kind of find emotions inconvenient. You probably don't know what to say to other people who are facing tragedy. And probably, maybe, possibly, you suffered some kind of an emotional trauma that's stored in your body, and so that you're kind of less able to use that perceptive avenue because it isn't very clear. So clearing yourself, practices of energetic clearing are the way that you will open up the feeler side of yourself. All right, so the next one is the sensor, which is where I have a more high score in. And so we receive through physical sensation, tingling, hot and cold flashes, goosebumps, other bodily sensations that alert me to pay attention. When I feel those things, I stop and I pay attention, and then I often get a vision in my head of what it is to pay attention to. Or if I'm talking to someone and they're telling me a story and I know that what they're saying is true, I'll get a rush of energy or a rush of goosebumps through my body. So oftentimes, other types of intuitive information are validated through body senses. The other thing that sensors are really strong with is synchronicity and omens and noticing things in the physical world and how they connect to our internal world. Maybe I'll be walking along and I'll suddenly feel a tingle and I'll look down and there's a feather sitting right there, and maybe the feather means something important like a spirit passing or something like that. So those kinds of synchronicities and how the body works with them are big for sensors. Sometimes sensors will hold an object and be able to tell you a lot about that object, or about the person who that object belonged to. So sensors go by feel. They don't necessarily have to have a vision, but each foot is placed where it's put because it feels right to put it there. We tend to trust our gut feelings and our instincts and use them a lot in what we do. The biggest problem for sensors is that our bodies are just one big antenna. And, pain that is suffered by the Mother Earth or friends or animals or patients all find their way into our bodies. And we had a friend in Malta. Do you remember George Trafford?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, talk about the downside of being too attuned to sensitivity. He was an excellent dowser himself, but George de Trafford in Malta belonged to a spiritual group who we are still in touch with. And I experienced walking with him alongside the A272 near Winchester in England. We're looking down into an amphitheatre where crop circles had appeared since in the 1920s, way before the more recent outbreak, you might say. And as soon as he, literally walking with us, to look down into the amphitheater, would cross. He wasn't aware of this until he'd nearly finished up on his back, hitting a very powerful ley line that runs through there. And it literally, we thought he was going to finish up in front of the vehicle. And he was almost, dropped to the ground. And the same happened when we were together with him in Malta. And again, it was this appearing to be oversensitive to earth energies in his case.
Yeah, so that is the downside to being a sensor is that your body can take on a lot of the trauma of what it is that you're feeling, or a lot of the energy, the excess energy gets stored in your body. So the best thing to do if you are a sensor is to help you is to stay centered. You need centering and clearing activities energetically to keep yourself, your instrument, clean. Our next one would be clairvoyance, and that is visioning. And people who are clairvoyant receive information either through the physical eyes or through visions in the mind's eyes. And when the skill first opens, mostly people are seeing flashes of light in their peripheral vision or bursts of color around people. And then they might have brief visions of things that are, about to come, or where you're with somebody and you suddenly have a vision of their life or something important for them. You might see auras, you might have visions, you might have dreams of future events. Usually people who are clairvoyant have strong lucid dreams. They have a lot of dreaming visions that turn out to have relevance. Clairvoyants often perceive people who have passed over. They might see spirit guides or other spiritual beings. They can see the whole picture rather than focusing on the steps along the way, and they're guided by vision. They don't worry about details. So the major drawback to being a clairvoyant is projection, is taking your vision and projecting it out into the world so that you're seeing your own internal construct rather than something that's really there. And that happens primarily when people are overly invested in the outcome. You want something so badly that you begin to create its reality. And all the intuitives have to worry about that, but visionaries seem to create that more than the others. So the way to avoid that is to practice non-attachment and non-judgment. And those are practices that help in all spiritual work, so those are always good things. Grounding and centering will help you with that non-attachment and non-judgment. And if visioning is your weakest score, you're probably not a conceptual thinker. And you might complain that you have no imagination and you can't visualize. And that's ridiculous. We all do. So the thing you want to do is actually cultivate your daydreams, cultivate your imagination. Imagination is the springboard to intuition. And if you can sit and allow yourself to daydream and then stop being in control of the daydream and just allow the daydream to move forward on its own, that's visioning. And very soon you'll be getting information that is a surprise.
Is that a kind of overlap, do you think, with meditation?
I think meditation relaxes the mind and opens the door to allow you to use your imagination.
Right. Yeah, well, these are all interesting points and essential for the more in-depth discussions that we have ahead of us. I'm, really looking forward to what we've got coming, because this is going to involve us all. And please, for those listening that have contributions to anything that we're talking about, by all means, give us a call and become part of the discussion. It's only by sharing that our world will grow.
That's very true. So we're going to go into break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the clairaudience, the final intuitive clairaudience, and then we're going to talk about some of the pitfalls that we all have to face as intuitives. Okay, thanks so much. We'll see you in a minute.
It's your world. Motivate, change, succeed. VoiceAmericaEmpowerment.com.
Being Here with Ariel and Shia Kane is an ordinary person's guide to modern-day enlightenment. This show is an exciting exploration that opens the door to living in the moment. Don't miss Being Here. Tune in every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time, 12 p.m. Eastern Time, with award-winning authors Ariel and Shia Kane, right here on the Empowerment Channel.
It's time for you to take a sweet and honest look at your life. Tune into Living Within the Sweet Spot with your host, Nikki Clagle. Each week, Nikki invites you to call into the program, where she will connect with each listener to show the power of God's love in every unique instance. There are gracious gifts and elements of power within each one of us. You just need to discover them and find your life's purpose. Live healthier and happier. Listen every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 7 a.m. Pacific on Voice America Empowerment. The Voice America Live Events channel is here now to showcase your corporate, individual, or organization's live event. Visit voiceamerica.com/live events to see all of our past live events and find out more. Whether it's a multi-day conference, special speaker, or single-day event, we've got everything to make your event a success. We can do a few hours or a few days. For more information about taking your event to the next level, call Jeff Spinard at 480-294-6417 or email info@voiceamerica.com. Again, that's Jeff Spinard at 480-294-6417 or send us an email to info@voiceamerica.com. Voice America is where you are and where you want to be. Join us around the globe as we broadcast live from some of the most interesting events available. Don't forget to view all our live events, including on-demand access to past events that you may have missed by visiting voiceamerica.com/live events.
Follow us on Twitter for more great ideas at Voice America Empowerment.
This is Exploring Beyond the Edge. To reach Dr. Cynthia Andrews or her guest today, please call 1-888-346-9141. That's 1-888-346-9141. You may also send an email to energyexplorations@gmail.com. Now, back to our program.
Hi there, welcome back. So we are talking about the 5 modes of perception or intuitive perception, and we are on the 5th mode, which is the listener, the clairaudience. And if this is your strongest score, your intuition reveals itself in 3 really kind of different ways. In one way, you may hear what seems to be external noises and voices. Someone who is not present might call your name or say a distinct phrase next to your ear. It's really happening inside your head, but you hear it outside of yourself. Sometimes you hear clicks and Morse code sounds that don't mean anything to you, and really what they're doing is alerting you to the importance of the moment. And so you don't know why, just take notice what you feel, notice what you are thinking about, notice what you're doing at that time, write it down, because it's going to make sense later on. You get a lot of Morse codes, don't you, Colin?
Yeah, but not in recent weeks, certainly, but yes, it comes and goes somewhat, but extremely mechanical. I mean, it's clicking away just simply like Morse code, Morse code in my ear.
So another way that clairaudience manifests itself is that you hear a message inside your mind. You might think of somebody and suddenly hear a message for them. You might be talking to someone and suddenly hear a message. And I'm putting here kind of in quotation marks because you may not actually hear it. You may actually see it in your mind's eye, see a sentence, but it's words that you're seeing. It's not a vision, it's actually words. And so while inner knowing comes in the form of a certainty, clairaudience comes in the form of words. So sometimes you have a complete sentence form in your head. Sometimes you might hear music. A lot of musicians hear the music inside their head before it ever is brought out on paper or into symphonies.
That's our friend Reg again.
Yeah. You did have a few of those.
Yes, he did. Love Is All Around came exactly that way.
Yeah. And then the third clairaudient manifestation is really kind of like channeling. It's bypassing your rational mind and allowing information to come through you that doesn't seem to be yours, that it's coming from someplace else. And that can be music, that can be channeled words. But the key to clairaudience is that it involves words or music sometimes. You've also had that happen to you. You've had that voice speaking to you. Yeah.
Well, to be honest with you, I can't wait for us to expand upon this and maybe even to have a complete program
on the clairaudience.
Well, I do, because I think it's extremely important. I consider myself to be a very average, very normal person, believe it or not.
No.
Absolutely a normal guy. And yet, when I've had that voice phenomena, this has only happened ever since I've been tied up with this research, but it does always come out of nowhere. I've probably had no more than 12 to 15 in my life, but when they come, they are profound. They're single sentences, they're clear voices, and they come either with suggestions or an instruction. And each time I've, you might say, complied, because they made sense when I heard them, and they've represented pivotal points, not just to me, but to many people who are unaware that I received information to do what I did, to say what I said. Even the 2080 of, the 80% man-made crop circles back in 2000 on that television interview, which I did, I'm going to say, instructed to say that. It's a bizarre, very bizarre phenomena. And I know others, well-known people that I've spoken to about this have the same experience. They just don't talk about it. And I understand that, because voices in the head can be schizophrenic. Let's face it, there's a certain amount of courage comes with divulging some of these things, because you're just looking at your character, your personality, what people think of you. But if we're to get anywhere with any of this, we've got to be honest, straightforward, transparent.
Okay, and that's actually a really interesting and important point, that we have to be honest. And we have to be honest about our intuition as well, because intuition does not necessarily mean truth. What you receive intuitively is important, and it gives you direction, and it gives you a bigger piece of the truth, but it is still received through your own lens, and so it's still received through your own bias. And your perceptions are skewered by your past. When you haven't cleared your own emotional trauma or your own strong leanings, then you're going to interpret the information you get through that lens. And so again, grounding, centering, creating boundaries, clearing, those are all practices that we have to use on a daily basis if we're going to begin to depend on intuition to lead us in our life. And so, again, if you want help with that, you can check out some of my books and classes, because that's my love. So another important thing about intuition and what we tend to do is that, if we go back to the stipulation that this is a hologram and each of us has a unique perspective within that hologram, what's true for one person isn't necessarily going to be true for another, because we're seeing different parts of the whole. And all of it is necessary to know the whole, but it isn't necessarily a universal truth. And it is certainly true to say that much of what we see in the outer world is a reflection of our own inner world. And some people believe it's all a reflection of our own inner world. But if we don't know ourselves, and we don't know what it is that we're projecting outward, then we can't trust our intuitive process. So self-knowledge and honesty is essential. And then there's this whole other thing that happens, which is, because we are different parts of the hologram, we can be standing in the same place and experience something different. And,
oh boy.
It's
a beauty. It's a beauty. But you can feel, you see, the adrenaline lifts in me, even just hearing the terminology associated with it. Yeah, I mean, this is an absolute baffler. And one looks at the scientists, people like Dean Radin, who might have a view on this, I'm sure he will have a view on this, shortly in an upcoming program. But we had about 50. This is just one example. Stephen Greer is known to most people here, I'm sure. Dr. Stephen Greer. he had compiled a process, a vectoring process, basically through meditation, but to focus upon the location and focus upon vectoring unexplained flying objects into the vicinity. Basically, it was that. Well, he brought about 25 people across from the United States to a field near Silbury Hill in Wiltshire, England. This is back a few years ago. I had about the same number from CPR International, the organization we put together to research the crop circles right back in the beginning in '83, CPR. So we brought these people together. Stephen and I were there ourselves, and Stephen led this by the process that I've described. And suddenly, in low cloud, we had given up on seeing anything because it was very low, misty cloud. There was a very light drizzle falling on our arms and, on our heads. It was not a clear night by any means, but suddenly dashing through the cloud at the lower level of the clouds was a white light. Now I'm describing it as I saw it, and about half of that group intermingled into one bunch of people. Saw exactly the same as I did, a white light flashing through the sky and splitting in two directly over our heads. The other half, and again, this could be a guy stood or a woman stood next to you or in front or behind you. We described it to, we went through everybody there present, and approximately half saw a cherry red light this side of the cloud flash moving through at speed very similar over the tops of our heads. The others, including myself, a bright white light splitting into. These are two different situations we're describing here. Clearly something happened, seen differently by different individuals, but only two sets, two groups, two events, paired from one.
Well, you think about that, and then you think trying to discern what is your personal truth versus what is a larger truth, and it becomes harder and harder.
It certainly does.
It would be interesting to know if there was something similar about the makeup of all of the people in one group and the makeup of all the people in the other group.
Yeah, there's a lot of work to be done there.
Certainly what we can say is that it's never really okay to think that our truth is the only truth or the most important truth. And I recently talked with someone who essentially said that I had to take his word on something because a psychic had told him that it was his time to come out as an intuitive. And Marcus Aurelius, I'm gonna go to a Marcus Aurelius quote: "Opinion is not fact, and perception is not truth." In other words, what we receive intuitively is not necessarily universal, and we need to, all of us, stay very clear within ourselves about where we're going and what we're doing and how we are projecting our own beliefs into the world. So, in the end, always hold to the importance of your intuitive information while being flexible and allowing your intuition to lead you to deeper questions, always going to deeper questions rather than definitive answers. And I don't think we have time, Colin, to go deeply into dowsing. So dowsing, one of the ways that we can kind of verify our inner truth, or our inner intuition, is through a process called dowsing, which is taking a tool like a metal rods or pendulums, or even just using the movement of your body to give you indications of answers. And basically what these are idiomotor techniques. In other words, your subconscious mind knows the answer, your conscious mind does not, and the subconscious mind sends to you through imperceptible muscle tensions an indicator. And so Colin is particularly good at dowsing, and we use the rods a lot. I don't know that. Well, so at one point, I took him to Longleat to a labyrinth, and it's the most extensive labyrinth in England.
In the world. It's the longest 1.7 miles of pathways. 16,000 yew trees are carved out to make this the largest one in the world.
So we were kind of going as a joke just to have fun being there, but Colin didn't realize I had hidden his dowsing rods in my purse, and when we got into the labyrinth, I took them out and handed them to him, and at first you were quite angry at me.
Well, it kind of was, because it came out of nowhere and I was just relaxing for the day. But I took the rods and you asked me to douse my way out.
I think you thought I was testing you.
I think it felt that way somewhat, but I was pleased to say that the inner strength of the dowsing rods took me directly to the exit, as you know, even though you were kind of telling me that wasn't the way.
Well, he didn't have a single wrong turn. And then as we made our way through, and every single turn did not lead to a dead end, we got to this last turn that had a long, long, long pathway, and there was kids running from the other direction, and I thought that they were running from the other direction because it was a dead end. And so I said, no, that's the wrong way. You turn around, go back. The rods would not let him turn around and go back. They kept turning and coming back, and so in the end, he was right, and his dowsing rods.
The rods were right.
And you did not know that.
No, I had no idea. No idea.
Well, we are at the end of our show. It went by really quickly. I hope you learned something. If it went by too fast, it's all on my website. You can go and get all that information, explorationsandenergy.com. And next week, be sure to tune in for Tiokas and Ghost Horse. It is going to be an extraordinary program. We cannot wait to talk to him. He's a really good friend, and he has a lot to say. So we will see you next week.
Bye for now.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Exploring Beyond the Edge is heard every Monday at 4 p.m. Pacific Time and 7 p.m. Eastern Time on the Voice America Empowerment Channel. Until our next program, Dr. Cynthia Andrews wishes you a great week.